It's the middle of the night when Vanessa, a pregnant woman, is rushed to the hospital. Her body is severely wounded, with a grotesque injury that doctors believe was caused by an attack from some wild animal. They work frantically to save her life, but the situation becomes complicated when Vanessa goes into labor. The atmosphere in the emergency room grows even tenser as the professionals struggle to help her give birth. After an extremely complicated and painful delivery, a boy is born. However, while the medical staff takes the baby away, Vanessa, exhausted and with irreparable injuries, succumbs and dies on the operating table. Years later, a completely different scene unfolds. A mysterious and extremely attractive woman leads an innocent and confused man to a kind of refrigerated chamber. The place looks strange and dark, but the man doesn't question it. The woman, however, reveals a secret entrance, guiding him into an exclusive and luxurious underground nightclub. Inside, the party is in full swing, pulsating music, vibrant lights, and a crowd dancing frantically. Everything seems normal at first glance, but the man begins to realize that something is off. Suddenly and unexpectedly, some drops of red liquid fall onto his face. Intrigued, he looks up and is struck with terror upon realizing that the ceiling sprinklers are spraying blood everywhere. He soon understands the terrifying truth: all the clubgoers are vampires. The scene turns chaotic as the man desperately tries to escape, crawling on the blood-soaked floor in search of an exit. However, he is interrupted when he notices a pair of clean, well-polished shoes standing out among the bloodied ground. A deathly silence falls over the club as a mysterious man appears. He is Blade, known to vampires as the Daywalker, the vampire hunter who walks in the sunlight. Without saying a word, Blade calmly strides to the center of the dance floor, and in the blink of an eye, begins a relentless massacre. Using a lethal combination of martial arts and firearms specially designed to take on vampires, he exterminates them one by one with brutal efficiency. His bullets are made of silver, and his sharp blades also bear the lethal metal for these creatures. The massacre continues as Blade faces hordes of vampires, and his skill is unquestionable. When surrounded by the club guards, led by the merciless vampire Quinn, he demonstrates even further his lethality. The fight against Quinn is particularly fierce. Blade uses his sword, blades, and stakes to eliminate various vampires simultaneously. In the end, he drives Quinn into a wall with stakes and sets the vampire on fire, leaving a clear message for Frost, another notorious vampire. Before Blade can complete his mission, police sirens echo from outside, forcing him to retreat. He vanishes before the authorities arrive, leaving only a stunned human and a carbonized Quinn as remnants of his passage. Believing Quinn is dead, the police take his charred remains for analysis at the hospital. Dr. Karen is assigned to perform the examination. She soon notices something extremely unusual about the vampire's body: his blood exhibits abnormal characteristics, and his fangs are terrifyingly large. Suddenly, Quinn shockingly awakens, still in a dreadful state. He attacks the other doctor present, draining part of his blood. Then he goes after Karen, who runs out of the room but is caught and bitten. However, before he can cause more damage, Blade appears, already anticipating Quinn's return. He confronts the revived vampire, but Quinn escapes once again, jumping into an ambulance and disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, Blade finds Karen on the floor, bleeding and desperate for help. Something about her reminds him of his mother, and he decides to assist her despite his rigid principles. Carrying her in his arms, Blade scales to another rooftop while dodging the gunfire from approaching police. He retaliates against the attacks before finally bringing Karen to his hideout. There, Whistler, Blade's mentor and ally, prepares a dose of garlic serum to inject into Karen, hoping to prevent her transformation into a vampire. Whistler warns Blade that if the treatment fails and Karen becomes one of the creatures, it will be necessary to kill her. Meanwhile, in the luxurious house of Erebus, the vampire leaders are gathered. The Shadow Council, composed exclusively of pure-blood vampires, those born as vampires, not turned, discusses Blade's recent attacks. Dragonetti, the elder of the council, reprimands Frost, a turned vampire, for his negligence in managing nightclubs like the one Blade invaded. The council members believe in a secret coexistence with humans, remaining a hidden and powerful force. Frost, on the other hand, advocates a more aggressive approach, insisting that vampires should openly rule humanity. This divergence of opinions creates a strong conflict between Frost and the purebloods, who consider him inferior. However, Frost promises to destroy the outdated traditions and impose his vision. The next day, Blade visits an acquaintance to replenish his garlic serum stock. He explains that his body is beginning to develop a resistance to the compound, which puts his mission at risk. Despite the limitations, his friend encourages him to continue, and the two share a brief moment of camaraderie. Back at the hideout, Karen awakens in a strange environment. She explores the place and encounters an impressive arsenal of weapons, including an intricately designed sword. As she exits, she observes Whistler injecting a liquid into Blade, who reacts violently, twitching and shaking. When she realizes she has been discovered, the duo quickly stops Karen from escaping and explains that they are on the same side. Whistler, a weaponry expert, develops the necessary tools for the fight against vampires, such as silver bullets, UV lamps, and garlic devices. They reveal that, due to the corruption and influence of vampires, the police are unable to help. Reluctantly, Karen begins to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Now they want her to go out, but first Whistler gives Karen a weapon known as the vampire threat so she can protect herself from the vampires who will surely come after her for knowing their secret. Meanwhile, Dragonetti visits Frost to scold him for wasting time and resources researching old vampire legends that are likely nonsense, slapping him for it. However, Frost remains unconcerned. When Karen arrives at her apartment building, she now suspects anyone she sees, especially people with strange tattoos on their necks. She finds Officer Krieger waiting in her apartment, and at first, he pretends he's there because she left the hospital without giving a statement. But suddenly, he attacks her, revealing that he is a familiar, a human who serves the vampires and, after years of service, could be rewarded if turned into a vampire. Blade suddenly appears, knowing this would happen because he was using Karen as bait. He beats up the officer and shows Karen the tattoo on the officer's neck before announcing that they will use Krieger to track Frost. They then check Krieger's car and find the truck full of blood bags, so Blade draws his weapon to demand an explanation. Karen stops him before he starts chaos in the city, and Krieger manages to escape. Blade decides to wait in a car outside for Krieger to reappear, and Karen announces that she is staying with him because she wants to find a cure. When night falls, Krieger comes to get his car, and Blade immediately begins to chase him through the city. Eventually, they arrive at a nightclub managed by vampires, and when they try to enter, a guard tries to stop them, but Blade simply beats him up. Inside the club, Blade beats up more guards until Krieger tells him about a secret entrance in the fridge that leads to a secret filing area. After sending Krieger away with a message for Frost, Blade and Karen check the place and encounter a disgusting vampire known as Pearl, who is in charge of the files and systems for the vampires. Meanwhile, Frost manages to finish translating the ancient texts. Krieger arrives to warn him about Blade, but Frost kills him and divides his body with his girlfriend. He then orders Quinn to capture Blade alive. Returning to Pearl, at first he doesn't want to cooperate, but then Karen starts burning him with UV light and Pearl quickly begins to spill everything. Frost plans to summon a blood god known as La Magra. Blade steals a hard drive with the information, and Karen finishes off Pearl with the light. Then Blade uses a special explosive spray to blow up a door, behind which they find the ancient vampire Bible. Suddenly, Blade hears a noise and finds a frightened girl, but when he tries to help her, she reveals herself to be a vampire and attacks him. Quinn arrives with more guards, and another fight begins during which Blade is tied to a column, and Quinn takes the chance to stab him in revenge. One of the vampires grabs Blade's sword, only to lose his hand in the trap at the hilt. At that moment, Blade reveals that he is using an earpiece if he needs help, and the nearby wall explodes, revealing Whistler. After exchanging a few more shots and punches, Blade, Whistler, and Karen run through a tunnel just before a bomb that Whistler left behind explodes. The tunnel leads them to the subway tracks, and while a train passes, Quinn jumps on Blade to initiate another fight. While Whistler escapes through a sewer hole, Blade pushes Quinn against the train, causing him to lose half his face and one of his hands. Karen hands him back his sword, but this only frightens Quinn. More vampires are coming, so Blade grabs Karen and they escape by jumping onto the train. Inside, Blade injects himself with a blood serum, and Karen begins to suspect he is a vampire. When they arrive at the hideout, Whistler explains to Karen that Blade's mother was bitten while pregnant and died after giving birth. He had been a lost child on the streets when Whistler found him and almost killed him, but realizing he wasn't a true vampire, he decided to adopt him. Blade is half vampire and half human, which allows him to have certain abilities such as strength and regeneration, but he can still walk in the sun. The serum he takes prevents him from developing the urge to drink blood. Meanwhile, Frost and his group cover themselves in sunscreen and helmets to take Dragonetti to a sunrise, pulling out his fangs before letting the sun kill him instantly. Afterwards, Frost presents the fangs to the rest of the Shadow Council and asks for 12 volunteers. In the morning, Karen decides to take Whistler's research to work on a permanent cure with Blade's serum as the base, and her first result makes the vampire blood explode. After Karen takes a sample of her blood, Blade goes out to buy more ingredients for his serum, and Whistler checks Karen's wounds, saying she only has 1 day left. While in downtown, Blade finds Frost waiting for him while using sunscreen. The vampire is holding a small child as a shield so that Blade won't attack him and offers a truce, but Blade knows Frost wants to bring the blood god back and is against that. He draws his weapon and shoots, but Frost throws the girl into traffic and escapes. Blade has no choice but to save the girl first, losing his prey. Back at the hideout, Karen manages to create an appropriate cure serum that she immediately injects into herself. At that moment, Frost and his men arrive and beat up Whistler before taking Karen hostage. When Blade returns, he is devastated to find Whistler's dying body. Whistler says he looked at the hard drive and explains Frost's plans, saying the ritual needs the blood of a daywalker like Blade. He also mentions that he doesn't want to be a vampire, so Blade respects his wishes and leaves him with a gun so he can end his own life. Afterwards, Blade finds a provocative video of Frost, asking him to come find him and giving him the address. Overcome with pain, Blade arms himself with silver and the new serum before leaving to find Frost. Moments later, Blade invades Frost's headquarters using a motorcycle. On the first floor, he effortlessly shoots all the guards who dare to cross his path. On the second floor, he fights hand-to-hand with 2 martial arts specialist vampires, but after exchanging a few blows, Blade injects them with the serum and makes them explode. When he finally reaches Frost's room, Blade finds a shocking surprise: Vanessa is still alive. She became a vampire right after giving birth. In fact, it was Frost who bit her, and now she is his lover. This distraction allows Frost and his guards to catch him off guard and beat him into submission. Afterwards, Blade and Karen are taken to the Temple of Eternal Night, and Blade cannot defend himself because his body is weak from thirst. Frost reveals that he stole the serum vials and throws them to the bottom of the pit before sending Blade to his place to begin the ritual. Karen is pushed into a hole where she finds her colleague in an almost zombie-like state due to thirst. There are also a pile of bones on the floor, so Karen uses one to smash the vampire before starting to climb out of the hole. Meanwhile, Blade is strapped to a special device for the ritual, and Vanessa approaches him inappropriately, saying he needs to accept that she is no longer the mother he remembers. The device then closes and begins extracting Blade's blood. Upstairs, Frost places the council members around the temple, and when one tries to resist, Frost's girlfriend kills him. Blade's blood begins to drip onto all of them and onto Frost in the center, and when a lightning bolt strikes the temple, it kills the entire council and transfers their powers to Frost, making him the supreme vampire god. Returning to Karen, she finds Blade and frees him from the device, but he is obviously too weak to survive. Karen removes the bandage and convinces him to drink her blood, which instantly heals him and puts him in a state of fury. At that moment, Vanessa arrives, and Blade immediately begins to fight her, ignoring her as she tries to seduce him, making him love his dear mother and kill her. Afterwards, Blade rushes upstairs, and when Quinn tries to stop him, Blade destroys him in seconds. Feeling powerful for having drunk real blood instead of the serum, Blade begins to fight all the guards with fierce fury, needing no weapons to kill them in seconds. Karen goes after Frost's girlfriend, missing a few shots, but remembering to use the vampire threat at the last moment to get rid of her. After recovering his sword, Blade fights Frost in a fierce sword battle. Blade manages to cut Frost into many pieces, but Frost's new powers allow him to quickly reconstitute. They begin exchanging blows again, but Frost is simply too strong and stabbing him does nothing. At that moment, Blade notices the serum that had fallen earlier and throws his sword to recover it. He then injects Frost with all of them at once, causing him to explode. In the end, Blade and Karen escape the temple, and Karen offers Blade her cure. Blade refuses, because curing him of his need for blood would also remove his daywalker powers, and he wouldn't be able to hunt vampires, but he wants to continue protecting the city. Sometime later, Blade appears in Moscow, ready to kill a vampire who was about to attack a woman. Sometime later in the Czech Republic, we see a man entering a facility and sitting next to another individual. They start to talk and it is revealed that both donate their blood in exchange for money. Shortly after, the man, Nomak, is called by a woman who begins to ask questions to determine his eligibility for donation. As they converse, it becomes clear how secure and highly controlled the facility is. Nomak is then taken to another room, where he is forcibly restrained and placed in a chair. It's here that the Blood Doctor, a sinister figure with spines for fingers, appears. In an unexpected twist, Nomak breaks free, lunges at the woman, and brutally kills her. He throws an officer against the wall, easily overpowering him. Nomak then turns to a camera, delivering a chilling message before turning to the Doctor and killing him as well. Meanwhile, Blade begins to narrate, explaining how he is a daywalker, capable of traversing between the human and vampire worlds. As he speaks, flashbacks of Whistler's past emerge, reminding us that Whistler became the very thing he despises. The scene shifts to Blade, fully equipped, adjusting his weapons as he prepares for the battles ahead. In the present, Blade is fiercely pursuing a group of vampires, shooting at them as they flee. As they attempt to escape on their motorcycles, Blade moves swiftly, firing a bullet that brings one down. Seeing the others rushing toward him, he quickly throws a silver weapon, causing a vampire to collide. Without wasting time, Blade leaps onto another, effortlessly killing him. Finally, he corners the last one, questioning him about Whistler's whereabouts before swiftly ending his life. Elsewhere, a group of men is partying until an unexpected knock at the door interrupts them. It's Blade, who bursts in, continuing his relentless hunt by killing the vampires inside. In the midst of the chaos, he is attacked by more vampires, and using his knives, Blade confronts multiple enemies at once, showcasing his extraordinary combat skills, stabbing and eliminating each attacker with precision. Blade enters another room where he discovers a man inside a containment tube. He frees the man, revealing it to be Whistler, his old friend. Blade carries Whistler over his shoulders and drives him to a secret facility, arriving with him in tow. There, he meets a man who questions why Blade hasn't finished off Whistler. Blade places Whistler in a chair, trying to talk to him, hoping to bring him back from his tortured state. Blade pulls out a gun from a box and sits, reminiscing about Whistler's words from the past and how he let him die. He cocks the gun and approaches Whistler, asking how he feels. Slowly, Whistler regains consciousness and begins to ask questions, quickly returning to his work. He recounts the torture he endured while Scud, who works nearby, introduces himself, confusing Whistler about his role. The two argue over how things should be done, but their discussion is interrupted when unexpected visitors arrive, armed and ready for battle. Blade and the team prepare to fight. Suddenly, figures resembling ninjas silently infiltrate the facility, and a barrage of gunfire explodes, but Blade quickly engages in an incredible sword fight. The displayed skill is astonishing, with Blade and the masked attackers showcasing unmatched prowess. Blade manages to hit one of them, but is soon confronted by another, making the battle uneven. The fight continues, with their swords clashing in a brilliant back and forth. Finally, the masked figures stop and reveal they are not there to fight, but to propose a truce. They identify themselves as Assad and Nissa, explaining that a new and dangerous enemy is rising. They tell Blade that the only way to combat this threat is to unite, as it is in their best interest to work together. Accepting their offer, they board a helicopter together, teasing Blade for agreeing without a plan. Blade reveals the harness strapped to himself, making them reconsider their ability. They arrive at a location and enter as a group, observing the technology they possess as they meet their leader, Eli. He welcomes Blade and also meets his lawyer, Connor, thanking him for taking down Frost, explaining the new predators at play. Blade watches footage of Nomak and how he has evolved over the years. The group tells Blade that he needs to be stopped, or humans will suffer at the hands of this new creation. Blade reluctantly agrees to join the Blood Pack, an elite group of vampires trained to kill him, consisting of Lighthammer, Verine, Priest, Snowman, Chupa, and Reinhardt. However, the Blood Pack members are far from happy to be led by the Daywalker. For they were once preparing to hunt him down, and tensions rise, especially with Reinhardt, who openly challenges Blade's authority. To ensure cooperation, Blade takes a drastic measure. He plants a silver nitrate bomb, courtesy of Scud, at the back of Reinhardt's head, with Blade holding the detonator. The bomb is set to explode if anyone tries to tamper with it, leaving Reinhardt no choice but to follow Blade's lead. Joining vampires Assad and Nissa, the daughter of vampire Lord Damaskinos, Blade and the Blood Pack begin their hunt for Nomak, the leader of the Reapers, a new breed of vampires more dangerous than any they have faced before. They begin observing places where vampires are known to congregate, including blood banks and hideouts, as these locations would also attract the Reapers, who feed on both vampires and humans. Their first target is the House of Pain, an old hotel turned vampire hideout. The building houses around 200 to 300 vampires who are engaged in a chaotic scene of dancing and feeding. The Blood Pack moves cautiously through the building, searching for any signs of Reapers. The group splits up, trying to find clues, while we see Reinhardt still holding a grudge against Blade. Nissa, on the other hand, walks through an abandoned space and sees a staircase, climbing it to look for Reapers. Meanwhile, Scud is sitting in the van, enjoying food while the group does all the heavy lifting. In the meantime, Assad spots Nomak, who disappears like a ghost. Blade also enters a room with Nissa, finding it empty. As dawn approaches, their suspicions are confirmed. Scud begins to panic when Whistler disappears. Still searching, Nissa is grabbed by Nomak, who covers her mouth, while Reapers begin to emerge from the basement. In moments, the hideout transforms into a battlefield. The Blood Pack manages to kill several Reapers, but their victory is fleeting. Despite their best efforts, the Reapers prove incredibly resilient, with Nomak escaping even after being injected with Ida, an anticoagulant designed to destroy vampires. In the chaos, Priest is bitten by one of the Reapers, realizing that there is no cure for a Reaper bite. The Blood Pack has no choice but to leave him to be destroyed by the rising sunlight. Lighthammer is also bitten during the battle, but chooses to hide his wound from the rest of the group, knowing the consequences if they find out. This first encounter with the Reapers is a harsh lesson for Blade and the Blood Pack. They quickly learn that the Reapers are impervious to their usual arsenals of silver, Ida, and garlic. Terrifyingly, the Reapers possess the ability to quickly heal from almost any injury, including silver stakes driven into their hearts. Blade realizes they are facing a foe far more formidable than he anticipated and that the Reapers will not be easy to defeat. Meanwhile, back at the High Council, Damaskinos receives troubling news from his lawyer, Conan, who informs the Vampire Lord about Priest's death during the Reaper attack and warns that the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. He expresses concern that it is risky for Damaskinos to be outside the House of Pain. Blade arrives at the location and assesses the Reaper they have captured. Along the situation, he theorizes that the Reaper's body, having gone several hours without feeding, has begun to consume itself from the inside out. The Reaper's accelerated metabolism requires constant feeding, and without sustenance, they begin to deteriorate rapidly. With the Reaper on the brink of death, Nissa seizes the opportunity to conduct an autopsy, hoping to learn more about their biology and vulnerabilities. During the autopsy, Nissa discovers that the Reapers possess a barb-shaped tongue that delivers a neurotoxin, paralyzing their victims while they feed. The analysis reveals that the Reapers' hearts are encased in a protective layer of bone, making it nearly impossible to stake them through the heart. This explains why traditional methods of killing vampires have proven ineffective against them. The only known weakness the Reapers possess is their vulnerability to sunlight and ultraviolet light. Unfortunately, these weaknesses also pose a threat to vampires, creating a significant challenge for Blade in his mission to destroy the Reapers without endangering his vampire allies. Determined to find a solution, Scud spends the rest of the night constructing UV grenades using phosphorus rods, hoping they can be used to combat the Reaper threat. At dawn, Blade and his team, Whistler, Nissa, Assad, and the Blood Pack are fully armed with UV weapons, UV grenades, and large-scale UV bombs, all designed to give them an advantage in the battle against the Reapers. With their weapons ready, the group ventures into the sewers, splitting into 3 units to cover more ground. Whistler is paired with Chupa and Reinhardt and sent down the eastern tunnel, while Lighthammer, Varine, and Snowman head in the opposite direction, and Blade joins Assad and Nissa. As the teams advance through the dark and perilous sewers, tensions between the Blood Pack and Blade's allies reach a boiling point when Chupa and Reinhardt manage to isolate Whistler. Chupa seizes the opportunity to take revenge, brutally beating Whistler and mocking him, saying that when a partner goes missing, Blade loses one. Meanwhile, Verine sees a Reaper, which frightens her, forcing her to climb, with it soon behind her, and she shines a light on both, killing them. Reinhardt, on the other hand, sees Reapers crawling and informs Blade, who rushes to save Nyssa. Assad and Nyssa continue through the sewers and Blade instructs them to get out, but they are attacked by Reapers, prompting Blade to throw a grenade. Blade readies his sword and kills the Reapers as the UV grenade explodes. Nyssa and Blade run as they are pursued, leading to Chupa being killed by them. Reinhardt sows chaos, shooting and running. He continues shooting, but is surrounded as Blade and Nyssa join the fray. Blade throws a grenade, killing most of the Reapers, and continues using his weapon to eliminate more, unafraid, protecting his group as they head for the exit, shooting at the Reapers. Nyssa and Reinhardt use their remaining strength to keep them at bay, and Blade's grenades explode, exterminating them all. Blade remains victorious as he cautiously descends, armed, surveying the mess he created. Whistler is then confronted by Nomak, who hands him a ring to show Blade, which will help uncover the truth. Blade arrives and sees Nyssa severely injured. Holding her sorrowfully, he cuts his own hand, allowing her to drink his blood, bringing her back to strength as Nomak watches. Suddenly, Blade is attacked by Conan and his men, along with Reinhardt, who betrayed him, holding on to his grudge while Whistler is also captured. Meanwhile, Nyssa confronts her father, Damaskinos, asking about Blade and explaining how he saved her life. As the conversation unfolds, we see Blade and his group held captive, surrounded by guards inside a chamber. Their situation is interrupted by Damaskinos, who reveals the existence of a new mixed DNA strain, presenting the next stage of vampire evolution. However, Whistler notes something familiar, a ring that leads him to confront Damaskinos, revealing a deeper truth. Nomak is the son of Damaskinos, a revelation that leaves Nyssa shocked and confused. Suddenly, Reinhardt betrays Blade, shooting him and launching an assault. In a shocking twist, it is revealed that Scud was also working for Damaskinos all along. Scud mocks Whistler and Blade, revealing that he orchestrated the entire plan. However, Blade had anticipated this betrayal and remotely detonates the bomb he had previously planted, swiftly and calculatedly killing Scud. Blade, weakened, is carried and placed on a table, where his blood would be harvested for the experiment. Meanwhile, Reinhardt prepares to kill Whistler, but outside the building, Nomak observes the situation, waiting for his moment. Nyssa, torn between loyalty and betrayal, confronts her father, furious for having been deceived her entire life. Her rage is met with violence, as Damaskinos strangles her and threatens, asserting his control over the situation. Back inside the facility, Blade remains strapped to the table while Conan, one of Damaskinos' subordinates, interrogates him about Nomak. At that exact moment, Nomak begins his attack, easily cutting through several guards in his fury. As chaos builds, Whistler manages to break free from his restraints, seizing the confusion to attack Reinhardt and shoot Conan, freeing Blade from his captivity. However, Blade is still unconscious. Whistler urges him to get up, trying to motivate him as the battle continues. Meanwhile, Nomak's fury leaves a trail of destruction as he continues his rampage, finishing his last victim with a roar of rage. He heads for Damaskinos, who is now surrounded by guards. Despite their best efforts, Nomak overpowers them, relentlessly pursuing his father. Damaskinos barely escapes, fleeing just in time. Inside the facility, Blade and Whistler are targeted as they try to escape, causing them to fall. Blade crawls toward a chamber full of blood, but is struck again by Reinhardt, causing him to fall into the blood pool. Reinhardt steps back, believing Blade is finished. However, the blood rejuvenates Blade, allowing him to rise stronger than ever, fully regenerated and ready for battle. As the guards rush to confront him, Blade snaps his fingers, signaling that the fight is far from over. With newfound strength, he begins to eliminate the guards one by one, showcasing his incredible combat skills. Blade uses the guards' own weapons against them, even performing a suplex through a glass barrier. His dominance in combat is clear as he takes down the opposition with ease. Finally, Blade and Reinhardt face off in an epic confrontation. During the fight, Blade catches his sword in midair and uses it to finish Reinhardt off, delivering a fatal blow, a reverence to the return of the unbeatable Blade. Whistler tosses him the iconic sunglasses, signaling that Blade is back in full form as Whistler shoots at the chamber. Blade stands tall, ready for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, still fleeing, Nissa locks Damaskinos inside the building and tells him this is revenge. At the same time, Nomak finally arrives, ready to take what he desires, but the father tries to manipulate him with his words, saying he will be cured. He embraces him like one of his own sons, but Nomak, being too clever, bites his neck, slowly and painfully killing Damaskinos as Nissa watches him die. Nissa then tells Nomak to finish the job, and he begins to bite her, but is interrupted when Blade arrives. He dives into Nomak, stabbing him, leaving him in agony. They begin a one-on-one combat, exchanging blows, trying to overpower each other. Blade is thrown by Nomak, showing just how motivated he is, as he tries to kill Blade. He holds Blade attempting to break him, but ends up being knocked down by Blade himself. He then turns the tables and they begin again, fighting on their feet. Nomak throws an object at his opponent, forcing him to fall, and seeing a weapon, Nomak goes to finish Blade, ready to bite him, but is interrupted when Blade stabs him directly through his organs, finally gaining the upper hand. Nomak struggles to breathe and removes himself from his misery as he fades away. Blade watches as the battle comes to an end and quickly grabs Nissa, who is on the brink of death due to Nomak. Blade carries her to the roof to show her the beautiful view, enjoying their last moments together, while Whistler also arrives, watching them. Nissa and Blade watch the sunrise and stare at each other as she fades away, dying peacefully in Blade's arms. In a remote desert, Danica and her vampire crew carefully uncover an ancient temple, removing a hidden brick that reveals a secret passageway below. Inside, they find writings from 4,000 years ago suggesting the cradle of civilization, an ominous discovery. As they explore, a hole suddenly opens beneath them, and in a flash, a hand drags one of the vampires into darkness. The others rush to help but find only their headless companion, who ignites and turns to ashes, leaving them in panic. From the shadows, a fierce creature emerges, crawling from the darkness. In the present, we see a man in a room debating with Dread Edgar Vance about the subject of vampires. Also present is Martin Ved, the police chief, who listens as Edgar talks about the health of humans while cameras roll. Meanwhile, in the bustling city, Blade, the legendary vampire hunter, is in the midst of an attack on a warehouse full of vampires. As a hybrid with superhuman abilities, Blade can walk in sunlight and resist silver, but to the public, he is seen as a ruthless killer. Law enforcement is watching his every move, waiting for him to make a mistake. During the warehouse raid, Blade moves with precision, quickly eliminating the vampires trying to escape. He dodges cars and takes down his enemies in seconds. His old ally Whistler arrives in a truck, throwing Blade's vehicle into gear as the hunt intensifies. Blade engages in a high-speed chase, pursuing two vampires in vehicles. After an exhilarating pursuit, Blade kills both but soon realizes he has been tricked. Upon catching up to the other vehicle, he intercepts it, but one of the vampires he thought was dead reveals themselves to be human moments before dying. Danica, who orchestrated the trap, has recorded the entire incident, incriminating Blade as a murderer. With the police rapidly approaching, Blade is forced to flee, leaving behind the evidence of the trap. Frustrated by the increasing threat against him, Blade returns to his hideout. There, Whistler provides Blade with a new inhaler to aid in consuming the serum that suppresses his bloodthirst, ensuring he maintains control. Meanwhile, Danica sends the incriminating footage of Blade to the FBI, triggering the legal mechanisms to pursue him. Back at her home, Danica and her crew are shocked as they watch the capture of their new temple victim on the monitor, amazed by his abilities. She enters a secret facility in her building and examines the creature they brought from the temple, an entity now known as Drake. As the original vampire, Drake criticizes modern vampires for their weakness. However, Danica, eager for him to lead their fight against Blade, urges him to take command and show the world the power of the ancient vampire bloodline. While this is happening, Whistler buys a newspaper while being watched by the police. He shows Blade the paper, telling him he's public enemy number one and that he should be careful, but Blade, unfazed, does not take the threat seriously. At a train station, a group of young vampires is seen having fun and being a nuisance in public, looking for food because they're hungry. They spot a young woman holding a baby and begin to watch her, making malicious comments. The woman sits alone in the dark and becomes frightened upon hearing voices. The young vampires start to harass her, thinking they have found an easy target. They snatch the baby from her arms, only to discover it's a decoy. The woman reveals herself to be Abigail, a skilled vampire hunter, equipped with deadly combat skills and specialized weapons. With rapid precision, Abigail takes down the vampires, turning them to ashen moments, leaving no survivors. Meanwhile, back at Blade's hideout, Whistler sits alone, staring at his ring, while Blade meditates quietly. The FBI, tracking them, locates their hideout, launching a large-scale attack. Sensing danger, Whistler makes a heroic decision. He activates a self-destruct sequence that will destroy all their technology, but not before engaging in a fierce shootout with the FBI agents. As the hideout explodes, Blade narrowly escapes, but law enforcement is waiting for him. Surrounded, he has no choice but to surrender. At the police station, the FBI ridicules Blade, dismissing his vampire hunting mission and calling him a delusional murderer. They do not believe in vampires, and Blade is treated like a lunatic. Dr. Edgar Vance enters the room, asking the agents to leave. Blade and Edgar begin to converse, with Edgar implying he is a friend, and asking questions that make Blade feel uncomfortable, though he responds calmly. As Blade now finds himself in the hands of Dr. Vance, they prepare for a mental evaluation. Dr. Vance plays his role, treating Blade like a disturbed criminal, asking trivial and condescending questions to assess his sanity while injecting him with tranquilizers to keep him subdued. But during the evaluation, Blade makes a shocking discovery that Dr. Vance is a familiar, a human who serves vampires. Vance subtly reveals a tattoo on his body symbolizing his allegiance to a vampire lord. Blade quickly understands that the entire trap, his capture, the FBI raid, and his imprisonment were orchestrated by Danica to eliminate him once and for all. At this moment, Danica and vampires like Jero arrive at the police station, pretending to be Blade's transfer team. Weakened by the tranquilizers, Blade cannot defend himself. Suddenly, the window shatters when another vampire hunter, Hannibal, arrives, burning one of the vampires. Hannibal fights off several vampires, and as Danica flees, Jero pins Hannibal against the wall, but Blade uses his inhaler to quickly recover, kicking Jero away. He joins forces with Hannibal, and together with Abigail, who reveals herself as Whistler's daughter, they fight against the police and vampires. Surrounded, Blade escapes through the ceiling while Abigail uses her weapon to carve a path through the vampires. Outside, they encounter more police, but Dex arrives to pick them up in a van. As they flee, Jero pursues them, but Abigail hits him with an arrow, slowing him down. Blade is taken to a new hideout where he meets Abigail's vampire hunter team, the Nightstalkers. The team includes weapon designer Hedges, blind scientist Summerfield, and her daughter Zoe. Blade begins to reprimand the group, saying they are amateurs and not ready for this, but he is interrupted by Abigail, who reveals that Whistler wanted this team to work with him. Blade, still skeptical, is informed by Hannibal, who shares that he was once a vampire and a prisoner of Danica until Abigail saved him and Summerfield cured him. Despite this, Blade still views them as amateurs and is initially uninterested. Meanwhile, Danica is furious that her plan has failed until Drake enters the room, saying he will join the fight. Back at the hideout, the group shows videos of Danica, explaining who she is and how she became involved with her. Abigail reveals that Dracula has returned and begins to show artifacts, confirming the legend of Dracula, who has survived for over 7,000 years. Throughout history, Dracula has had many names, but in modern times, he is known as Drake, the powerful vampire that Danica awakened. As the original vampire, Drake possesses immense power that even the sun does not affect. As the Nightstalkers plan their next move, Drake wanders through the city in daylight, observing how modern society has changed over the centuries. His curiosity leads him to a Gothic-themed shop where he becomes disgusted by the trivialization of his legacy. The store is filled with tacky Dracula merchandise, including cheesy vampire novelty items that mock his ancient lineage. Offended by the absurdity, Drake throws one of the clerks through the window and feeds on the other, reminding everyone of his deadly strength. Back at the Nightstalkers' hideout, Summerfield reveals a critical development, the creation of Dire, a biological weapon designed to eradicate vampires. The team's goal is to use Dire to eliminate the vampire race once and for all. However, there is a problem: the virus is not potent enough to be lethal to all vampires. To make Dire effective, they need stronger DNA, and that's where Drake comes in. As the original vampire, Drake's blood is pure and unaffected by centuries of genetic mutations that have weakened the vampire race. Armed with this plan, Hedges equips the team with a variety of new weapons, including a powerful UV crossbow that can incinerate vampires instantly with intense ultraviolet light. Heading out for their mission, Hannibal and Blade get into the car with Abigail, ready to hunt vampires with their new weapons. The Nightstalkers set out to track familiars throughout the city, interrogating various members of the familiar network and following the trail of the tattoos, but none of the familiars provide useful information. After several pointless fights, Blade, Abigail, and Hannibal hang a familiar from a bridge, hoping for information. Just in time, the familiar receives a call from Vance, giving them a lead. They release the familiar and head to Vance's office, fighting through security on each floor. When they finally reach Vance, Hannibal realizes that the real Vance is dead and that the imposter is Drake in disguise. Drake quickly captures Hannibal, stabbing him before escaping through the window. Blade chases him through the city, breaking through buildings until they reach a rooftop where Drake reveals he has kidnapped a baby. Blade starts talking to Drake, asking why he killed Vance and how he is able to survive in the sunlight. Drake looks at the people below, telling Blade that he is immortal and cannot be killed. Mocking Blade, Drake throws the baby, forcing Blade to catch it as Drake vanishes. Abigail tends to Hannibal's wounds, urging him to stay strong. After the chaos, Blade visits Hannibal after injuring himself. Meanwhile, Drake returns to Danica, but instead of cooperating, he feeds on her, establishing his dominance. Later, Summerfield locates the vampire lab at Biomedical Enterprises, where genetic materials have been purchased. Blade and Abigail head to a remote warehouse, where the FBI familiar arrives with its vampire leader. Abigail quickly kills the vampire, and Blade forces the agent to take them inside. Upon entering, they discover it is a blood farm facility where humans are kept in stasis to provide an infinite blood supply to the vampires. Furious, Blade kills the agent and forces the technician to shut down the facility, killing the human donors in the process. At the hideout, the team relaxes, unaware that Whistler has entered the building. Approaching Hannibal, he appears confused to see Whistler, but soon what looks like Whistler grabs his face, revealing it to be Drake. Moments later, Summerfield hears a strange sound and goes to check. Bumping into a bloodied ball, she tells Zoe to hide as she continues her search, unaware that she is passing by the bodies of Dex and Hedges. Suddenly, Drake finds her, and from his hidden spot, Zoe hears her mother's horrified scream. Zoe thinks of leaving her hiding place but finds Drake blocking her path. Blade and Abigail return to the hideout to a horrific sight. Hedges, Dex, and Summerfield are dead. Summerfield's body is grotesquely displayed, with a chilling message written in her blood. Hannibal and Zoe are missing, and Abigail cries over the loss of her friends, but Blade insists they need to leave. Meanwhile, Hannibal regains consciousness, trapped on the floor in the vampire's lair. They begin to beat Hannibal, demanding Blade's plans. When Hannibal refuses to cooperate, Danica threatens to turn him back into a vampire, leaving him starving until his only option is to feed on Zoe. Abigail processes her grief, honing her archery skills and hitting every target with impeccable precision. Blade, always alert, suddenly senses a presence in the building. It's Calder, another surviving member of the team. He brings a video message from Summerfield, recorded before her death, where she reveals she developed a functional strain of the dire virus, now in Calder's possession. If they can inject it into Drake, his blood will mix with the virus and kill all nearby vampires. However, there's a risk. It's unclear how the virus might affect Blade, as he is a hybrid. With time running out, Calder explains that he could only create a projectile containing the virus, and Abigail would need to make the shot with the arrow. Fortunately, the team has emergency trackers for situations like this and quickly locates Hannibal's position. Grabbing as many weapons as they can carry, Blade and Abigail head to the vampire's lair. Inside, Hannibal continues to suffer brutal beatings from Danica, refusing to reveal Blade's plans. Suddenly, the vampires begin to cough and feel their bodies being hurt, as Abigail has filled the air conditioning system with silver powder. With the vampires weakened, Blade bursts through the skylight, launching into a fierce battle, dispatching vampires left and right with specialized weapons. Inside, Abigail rescues Hannibal and then joins the fight, taking down more guards as Blade easily dispatches the emerging vampires, destroying them with his weapons. Abigail searches for Zoe amidst the chaos, and after taking out several vampires, she finally locates Zoe. Just as she does, a vampire grabs her from behind. Reacting quickly, she uses her UV bow to incinerate him. Meanwhile, Hannibal retrieves his gear and tries to reintegrate into the fight, only to encounter a pack of vampire dogs. Without hesitation, he makes a daring leap, tricking the dogs into following him out the window, sending them plummeting to their destruction. As Hannibal attempts to escape, he bumps back into his cell, only to be confronted by Jero. The two engage in a brutal fight, with Jero gaining the upper hand. Just when it seems Hannibal is defeated, Jero approaches to bite him, but Hannibal shoves an explosive into Jero's mouth, causing him to burn to ash. Meanwhile, Blade finally finds Drake, and the two engage in a fierce sword fight. Their skills are evenly matched, exchanging powerful blows, neither able to gain the advantage. As the confrontation progresses, several vampires attempt to intervene and shoot Blade, but Abigail quickly eliminates them with her shooting skills, effectively using her weapon. Danica then joins the fight, shooting at Blade, but Hannibal knocks her down amidst the chaos. Blade delivers a powerful kick, sending Drake crashing into a window. After a prolonged battle, both fighters drop their swords and continue the fight with their hands. Drake utilizes his immense strength, pounding Blade into the ground repeatedly as he begins to transform into his true monstrous form. Despite Blade's powerful kicks and punches, Drake's overwhelming strength starts to turn the tide against him. Just as Drake retrieves his sword, ready to deliver a fatal blow, Abigail shoots the poison arrow containing the virus at him. In a display of speed, Drake catches the arrow in midair and lets it go. Abigail quickly distracts him with a flurry of arrows, giving Blade the critical moment he needs. Seizing the opportunity, Blade grabs the fallen arrow containing the dire virus and injects it directly into Drake. Drake roars in pain as the virus courses through his body. His blood becomes a carrier of the dire virus, spreading throughout the building and killing all the vampires inside, including Danica, who disintegrates into ashes. Drake's monstrous form retreats, returning to his human appearance. In his final moments, Drake praises Blade for his honor, recognizing the strength of his opponent before dying. Shortly thereafter, FBI agents storm the building, finding it in ruins, with the vampire bodies turned to ash and only Blade's lifeless form remaining. They believe they have captured the notorious hunter and prepare to perform an autopsy on him. However, Blade suddenly awakens, fully recovered. Blade breaks free from the facility, fighting the agents, and makes a daring escape. With the virus having decimated Drake and the vampires, Blade prepares for the next battle, ready for any mission that lies ahead.